Saving and wealth are often spoken about as if they belong to the same process, as if one naturally leads to the other. It feels logical. You earn, you save, eventually you become secure. That sequence sounds reasonable. But saving and wealth operate on different mechanics. Saving is storage. Wealth is placement. Storage protects what already exists. Placement determines how it behaves over time. This distinction changes everything. Money that is stored is removed from interaction. It waits. Money that is positioned participates. Participation is what allows time to matter. Without participation, time has nothing to work on. This is why saving feels responsible but rarely feels transformative. Nothing changes structurally. The relationship between effort and outcome remains intact. Income still depends on labor. Time off still costs money. Wealth changes that relationship, not by eliminating effort, but by altering dependence. Positioning changes what happens when effort pauses. Does everything stop, or does something continue? That answer defines the difference. Most people never cross this threshold, not because they lack discipline, but because storage feels safer than placement. Placement introduces variability. Storage promises stability. Stability is comforting, but comfort delays structural change. Saving creates a pause button. Wealth creates a continuation. Pauses feel responsible. Continuations feel uncertain. So people pause indefinitely. This is why many disciplined savers still feel dependent. Remove income, and pressure returns. Nothing continues on its own. Savings buy time, not independence. Time is valuable, but time without redesign just delays the same outcome. Wealth isn't about having more money. It's about changing how money behaves. Behavior depends on placement, not intention, not discipline. Until money is positioned, it behaves like stored energy, potential, but inactive. This is the quiet difference most people never hear articulated. Saving protects. Positioning transforms. One reduces risk. The other reshapes time. Confusing the two keeps people responsible but dependent. Understanding the difference doesn't demand action. It demands precision. Because once saving and wealth are no longer blended together, the path stops being confusing, and effort stops being misdirected. Saving creates a sense of independence. Bills are covered, emergencies are manageable, life feels less fragile. But independence and dependence are not opposites. They can exist at the same time. Most savers are not financially fragile. They are financially dependent. Dependent on continued income, dependent on consistent employment, dependent on stability remaining intact. Remove the paycheck, and the system immediately tightens. Savings soften the shock. They don't remove the reliance. This is the distinction most people never name. They feel secure, so they assume they're free. Freedom implies continuation without constant input. Savings do not provide that. They provide delay. Delay is useful, but delay is not autonomy. Savers often discover this only during interruption, a job loss, a health issue, a life change. The question becomes immediate. How long will my savings last? That question reveals the dependency. Time is being purchased, not continuity. Continuity exists when something continues even if effort stops. Savings do not continue. They deplete. This creates a subtle behavioral effect. People protect income at all costs. Not because they love the work, but because the structure demands it. Risk feels dangerous. Change feels irresponsible. Even when opportunity exists, dependence narrows options. Savings were meant to create freedom. Instead, they often reinforce caution, because everything still depends on income continuing uninterrupted. This is why savers often describe their situation as comfortable but tight, safe but constrained. They don't feel desperate, they feel unable to move. Dependence doesn't always feel like fear. It often feels like responsibility. People confuse obligation with maturity and caution with wisdom. But responsibility without autonomy is still dependence. This isn't a failure of character. It's a consequence of structure. Savings were never designed to remove dependence. They were designed to absorb disruption. Absorption feels powerful. But power that depletes is not leverage. It's buffering. Wealth behaves differently. It reduces reliance instead of delaying consequences. That distinction matters, because until reliance changes, freedom remains theoretical. Most people don't lack discipline. They lack a structure that continues without them. Saving keeps people afloat. It does not move them ashore. Understanding this isn't an instruction, it's a diagnosis. And accurate diagnoses are the beginning of clarity. Before this continues, if you felt seen instead of sold to, that's the entire point of Relentless Wealth. Like the video, subscribe. We're just getting started. Money behaves differently when it moves. Not emotionally, mechanically. Stored money waits. It preserves value temporarily, but preservation is passive. Capital only compounds when it participates, when it is placed inside systems that respond to time. Motion is what allows time to interact with money. Without motion, time has nothing to amplify. This is where most people stall. Not because they lack money, but because their money is inactive. Inactivity feels safe. Nothing fluctuates. Nothing surprises. But safety is not growth. It's suspension. Suspension delays outcomes. Capital that moves enters feedback loops. It responds to demand. It adjusts to change. It compounds through repetition. This doesn't mean constant action. It means correct placement. Motion is structural, not frantic. When capital is positioned, it continues interacting with the environment, even when attention shifts elsewhere. That continuity is what most savers never experience. Their money waits for instruction that never comes. It sits outside the system. This creates a quiet paradox. The more disciplined the saver, the more static their capital becomes. Discipline without placement creates stagnation. Nothing compounds in isolation. Growth requires interaction. This is why time rewards movement, not speed, participation. Money that moves experiences variability. That variability is often misunderstood as risk, but variability is also opportunity. Capital that never fluctuates never learns. It never adapts. And without adaptation, compounding stalls. This is why saving alone cannot produce wealth. It removes money from motion. Wealth isn't created by storing capital. It's created by aligning capital with systems that evolve. That alignment is subtle. It doesn't feel dramatic early. There's no immediate reward. Time must pass. Feedback must accumulate. This waiting period is why most people retreat to saving. Saving responds immediately. Motion requires patience, and patience without feedback feels uncomfortable. So capital stays idle, protected but inactive. Years pass. Savings remain. Position does not change. This isn't about recklessness. It's about recognizing that money must engage with time to change behavior. Stored money is paused time. Positioned money is active time. That difference explains why saving feels responsible, but rarely feels transformative. Saving was never meant to create wealth. It was meant to create safety. Confusing those two objectives is where most people lose decades. Safety stabilizes the present. Wealth reshapes the future. One reduces fear, the other changes how time behaves. Saving answers the question, what happens if something goes wrong? Wealth answers a different one. What happens even if nothing goes wrong? That difference is subtle, and because it's subtle, it's rarely taught. Most lives don't collapse. They stabilize. Quietly, responsibly, predictably. Saving creates a pause in uncertainty, but pauses don't change direction. They delay the same trajectory. That's why saving can feel productive while nothing fundamentally improves. Life becomes manageable, but not expandable. Manageability feels like progress when instability was the alternative. But stability does not compound. It holds position. Over time, holding position becomes indistinguishable from falling behind. Not because something failed, but because everything else kept moving. Saving protects what exists. It does not redesign what's possible. That doesn't make saving wrong. It makes it incomplete. A foundation mistaken for a destination. Wealth requires a different relationship with time. Not urgency, not recklessness. Participation. Capital that is allowed to age, to adapt, to interact. That's why wealth feels uncomfortable early. There's no immediate relief, no instant signal that you're safe. Just quiet alignment. Saving calms the nervous system. Wealth challenges it. Because wealth requires trusting structure instead of control. Most people were never told that saving has a ceiling. They assumed discipline would eventually turn into freedom. It doesn't. Discipline preserves. Position transforms. Once that distinction is clear, saving stops being confusing, and wealth stops feeling mysterious. If this reframed how you think about saving, if it gave clarity without telling you what to do, like the video, subscribe, turn on notifications. More perspective is coming.